Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Brothers and sisters, we want to spend a few moments reflecting on some of the comments and questions that you brought forward. For those who have local fiqh questions and issues like that, I would advise you to go to the local Imams and the local fuqaha in the area. One of our brothers here, our friends, is saying, if I turn to Islam, will it be able to keep me away from the modern day temptations? What Islam does, this is the way of life prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, creator of the heavens and the earth. The same message given to Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, all the righteous ones from the beginning of time. And what this message is giving us, it gives us a direct link with the creator. That we can talk to God. We can talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through our dua. And it gives us a lifestyle that we can live, that would protect us in the life of this world. However, it does not take the temptations away from us. And the Prophet ﷺ actually said in one hadith, in one of his sayings, he said, the road or the way to paradise is surrounded by makari, by hateful things. And the way to hellfire is surrounded by desires. So the desires of this world, which are being exploited and pushed out of proportion, these will not go away. This will still be there. But as a Muslim, we now have a system that can protect us, which shows us how to be modest, have tahara, purity, to lower our gaze. It shows us how to move. It shows you how to relate to the opposite sex. It shows you how to structure your life. And this is a great protection against these calamities and temptations that you'll find in this life. Still, the struggle will be on. You will have to face the struggle. But at least now, you would have a way. I was so thankful to Allah when I accepted Islam. I was originally not a Muslim myself. And when I embraced Islam, although many of the morality of Islam, I already knew that. I had already stopped drinking and eating pork, and I believed in one God. But this gave me a systematic, clear belief. So I could really know the belief of Isa alayhi salam, of Jesus, and all the prophets. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the best example. And I wanted to say, one question came that is saying that what is meant by seeking refuge in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What I mean by that in English is not to pray to the Prophet, but we are seeking refuge, or we are following the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because when he passed away and his companions were really upset, and Umar ibn Khattab, one of the great companions, said, anybody who said the Prophet is dead, I will kill him. See, he lost control of himself. And when Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anh then saw the Prophet ﷺ in his death and kissed him, and then came out and he said, those who worship Muhammad, he is dead. And those who worship Allah, Allah is Hayyun la yamut, Allah is alive, he will never die. So as a human being, the Prophet, peace be upon him, has passed out of this world into the barzakh zone, into the zone of existence after this world where there is a form of life. But in this world, we follow his example. And so we are blessed to have his example recorded, that we can follow it in just about everything we do in this life. But when we seek refuge in the sense of our prayers, our sacrifice, that should be only for the creator of the heavens and the earth. Another question says, can you tell me ways to fight the shaitan when it comes? Well, one of the things that the great scholars tell us is that the heart, the qalb, it is like a fortress. And this is your conscience. This is your that which is connected to your soul. And it's like a fortress, and there are certain gates to get into the fortress. And these gates are protected. And we need to know what are these madakhil, these entrances into the heart. And this is a study done by the great ulama of Islam, madakhil iblis, the way the shaitan actually comes into your heart. This is an actual study which was done. And through pride, and through shahwat, through desires, and through extreme actions. And there are many ways, oversatisfied with food. There's many ways that the evil can actually come into our hearts. And so we should really seek refuge and protect ourselves from the diseases of the heart, arrogance and pride and conceit, and all of these different bad qualities. We should make isti'adha. If you feel evil coming on you, then you should make isti'adha min ash-shaytan. That you should seek refuge directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytanir rajim. If you really feel it come, spit over your left shoulder. If you really feel negative, and I can remember one time this brother and sister came to me, and the shaitan was coming in between them. And they used to fight, and the brother was tall. He was about 6'1", and the sister was about like 5'2" or something. But she was a tough sister, and she knew how to make him angry. So whenever he would come in, and she would just say the wrong things to him, she had some kind of a masochistic mentality. So she'd say these things like, "You little man," and "You nothing," and whatever. And so he would then get angry, and then he'd strike her. So then they came to me and they said that she was bruised and everything, and they want to come out of this cycle. How can we do this? And I told them, I am not a psychologist, psychiatrist, or social worker, but I can give you something from the great scholars coming from the Prophet ﷺ. And that is that if you get into this situation, first, the sister, you have to now change your thinking. But if this does happen, because the brother has kathratul ghadab, can't control his emotions. And so, we should seek refuge from the evil one immediately. If you're standing up, sit down. If you're sitting down and you're still trembling and shaking, then lay down. If that doesn't work, put water on yourself. Like make wudu, cool your flames. And I added another one, and I said that, if that doesn't work, then leave the room. The brother should just leave. And don't, be involved in that thing. And alhamdulillah, it appears they never came back to me. It seemed like they never had any more problems. But we need to have active solutions like this when we are facing evil which is around us. Another question says, Iman is to believe in the books of Allah. Does it mean the Bible? When it says that we should believe in the Torah and Zabur and Injil and Quran, it is telling us it is the original text. So the original revelation that came to Musa, to Moses, to Dawood, David, and to Isa, Jesus, and to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of these prophets, we believe in the original text. So that means the original Bible or the original Gospels, which would have been in Hebrew or Aramaic. The Dead Sea Scrolls are written in Greek. So what you have, based on the Council of Nicaea, they put together some religious texts, because Bible is like bibliothèque. It's a library of religious documents. So it has Old Testament, Psalms, New Testament, and these writings, for the most part, were not done in the time of Jesus, peace be upon him. They were by later writers that wrote it and put together in the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. So that book that they have is not the original teachings. There is some truth in it, but we need to confirm it with the last revelation of the Quran. We have to constantly confirm to make sure that we're not being led astray by what people wrote. The next question is, what happened to Cordoba? Now this is a city that was the largest city in the world in the year 1000, over 1 million people, and governed by the Muslims. But when Muslims got weak and left their faith and disunited and would go to secular forces, turning against each other in deception, when this happened, then there was a conquest that came from the north, and the king and queen of Castile and Aragon, the Catholic forces, bringing in secularism, they went south, and eventually they conquered Cordoba. When they conquered Cordoba and they looked at the masjid, this was the largest house of worship in Western Europe. It was one of the wonders of the world. And the king was about to destroy the masjid. And the architect said, "You can't destroy this place. It's too beautiful." So he agreed, and they built the cathedral using the masjid frame. So you will see it now when you go there. I went there to visit this place, and you'll see the framework of Islam, and crosses are on the top, and little ugly gargoyle creatures that they put all around to protect against evil spirits. So these things are all around the building. And unfortunately inside there's graveyards, graves inside the masjid. And we went to the front of the masjid, and the mihrab is still there, where the Imam would pray. And it says, you know, Subhanallah amma yushrikun. And you say, you know, glory to be to Allah, you know, on what they associate with Him. And, you know, Subhanallah, you see the polytheism that is there, it is really sickening. And so we were there, and so one Pakistani brother, he couldn't control himself, man. He went to the mihrab and he wanted to make 2 rakats, right? So the soldier came with a gun and says, stand down, with a gun to him, because he wanted to make 2 rakats. That is a fear they have in their hearts of Islam returning. Then the tour guide was taking the people around in Spanish, so I asked one of the Spanish Muslim brothers, stand you know, with the crowd. Tell me what he says. So he came back red-faced and he said to me that they said, this is the mihrab, and the ghost of Muhammad lives inside of this. And if you say something against Islam, the ghost will come out and get you. This is what they were saying about the mihrab. So this is a really sad thing. It's really hard for people to see. In the city of Harar, which is in Ethiopia, also I found a masjid that was turned into a cathedral, a church. So you see it in Harar also, and in some places. So Cordoba is gone, you know, as a city, but the memory still, you know, lies, and we pray that Allah, inshallah, would return, you know, that land to a state of Islam. It says, can you please clarify what you meant by, okay, that was the question. The next one is saying, the acquisition and application of Islamic knowledge is a key to being a good Muslim who follows the correct path. In this day and age, not all Muslims have access to this education, largely due to socioeconomic circumstances. With this being the case, aren't some Muslims more privileged than others, and how is it possible to curtail this void? Well, you know, this depends upon what we consider education. If we go back to the original time of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, they did not have, you know, major universities and, you know, laptops and all these things like that. They, you know, a very simple way of studying, and but they were serious. They would study. They would study a verse or 2, and they would implement. They would put it into practice. So education then was more based upon not gathering a lot of knowledge, but it was ilmun nafi'. It was beneficial knowledge. So they would practice, you know, what they would learn, and then they would go on to something else. So we can do this, even by halaqas inside of our masajid, you know, in our centers, we can begin to bridge this gap. You know, that if people have access to knowledge, they should spend part of their time in the community and give free education to the community, to people who cannot afford it. And we can do this in a humble way in the beginning, and it can spread around as it did in the early times. So education is relative to how you really look at what it is. It says a political study was carried out by one of the well-known political journals where it measured religious adherence against economic prosperity. The study concluded that the more prosperous the nation was, the less religious they were. The only exception were the United States and some of the Gulf states. The question is, why are the most secular nations in the world the most prosperous without believing in God? You see, again, it all depends upon what you consider to be religious. Because this is saying that the United States is a religious place. And when you actually grow up there and see the hypocrisy in the society and the attitude of people, you see that it is not really religion. It is a phony type of veneer of religion. But something else is going on inside of the church. They actually go to the church, you know, looking for a husband, looking for a wife. The preacher has got like about 6 wives right inside the audience, you know, his congregation itself. You know, all types of things go on in the disguise of religion. So it's not really religion that is like that. And really, you know, the secular nations, you cannot judge time by the last few decades or even few hundred years. You have to look at time, you have to go back and really see, you know, how civilizations have changed. We are at the end of, you know, some major civilizations. And these secular powers that have ruled the world now, they are crumbling now. The capitalistic system is falling apart. And these recessions that they're going through with interest and usury, it's shaking the very foundations. And people are looking for change all around the world. And so the so-called secular societies, really are not as powerful as they appear. It is more of an illusion that comes to us. But on the ground, people are looking for change, and there are some major changes, inshallah, which we will see in the near future. It says, if a Muslim leader of a certain political party promotes secular values and openly declares separation of religion and state, is it haram to vote for that person? Okay, if a person is promoting secular values and totally going against Islam, then we shouldn't really be involved in that person in terms of voting for that person and accepting that person. In terms of being involved in politics, it was decided by the scholars in South Africa that in a local level, it's important, for Muslims to have somebody involved. You cannot isolate yourself from the society. And the example gave, that one of the brothers told the example that in Chicago there was a group that was totally against politics. They said, I want nothing to do with these kuffar. And down the street, they were deciding whether that masjid was going to be demolished or not. And you don't want to be involved with them. But they're making a decision if they're going to destroy your mosque or not. Okay, so you need to have a representative in there. And on a lower level, where we can gain value, the maslaha, the benefit to the community, where we have a maslaha, then we should be involved in order to strategically to be able to control our areas and to clean our areas up from these un-Islamic practices and drug dealers and other things like that within our community. So it is important on that level. Sometimes on a higher level it just becomes slogans, and we should avoid empty slogans in political parties. Is it right to translate a verse of the Quran or Hadith just to back up a point you are making? It is the Islamic way. When we approach issues, we should try to find something from the Quran or from the Sunnah, which actually supports the issues that we are dealing with. If we find that our opinion is against the Quran and the Sunnah, then we should change our opinion. So the sources are your base, and then you have your opinion. It's not the other way around. So it is the Islamic way, to find dalil, adillah, to back up what you are saying, as long as it is Islamic. Can we ask dead righteous people to make dua for us? It is very clear in the Fatiha, and it doesn't take a great scholar or rocket scientist to understand when Allah Azza wa Jal tells us that we should say constantly, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. It's very clear. You alone, Allah, do we worship, and from you alone we seek assistance. End of story. You alone. And so our worship should be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and not for other individuals. When we go to the graveyards, we should make dua for the person and face Qibla, not the graves, not standing on them, not praying towards them. And we should pray for the benefit of people, but not to the person themselves. That is what we call in South Africa, that is ancestor worship. And you also have ancestor worship in China, where the people sweep the graves and burn money for the dead, in the next life. In Southern Africa, they also have ancestor worship, where they pray to their ancestors, asking their ancestors to pray to God. Okay? So this is shirk. This is a major form of polytheism that we should avoid. What advice or message do you have for young men who don't pray at the mosque, and young men feel it is harder to get married because of their background and lack of wealth? Well, we should start to look at the masjid, as the house of Allah. That when we go there, we are going to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those things we need in this life. We need to depend upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we need to go to His house. And then the unity of the people who are there. Also, if the masjid is being handled properly, there would be education in the masjid, and there are other things you can get. So we should try to go to the masjid, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as we possibly can. And, through that tawakkul, we need to try to get ourselves together. Too many times, brothers, they sit around, they say, I want a beautiful wife, and my wife must be this, and she must be that. But they say, okay, brother, what are you doing for yourself? You want your wife to be a PhD and Hafiz al-Quran, you know, and you know, a model and all these things, and you don't even have a job. You don't even have a job, man. We say like, wake up and smell the coffee, man. Wake up. Okay, so get yourself together. Get yourself together. Get your trade together. Get your skills together. Right? You know, exercise, whatever you got to do, get yourself together. Make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and inshallah, you know, your queen will come to you, you know, and she will grace you, inshallah, and everything will work out. But if you don't do anything, you can't expect Allah to send through the window this, you know, princess, you know, to rescue your life. Another question says, as a youth, if you have stolen or taken something from individuals and you can't remember who to pay back, how do you pay it back? Well, that's a good question. I mean, we are not responsible. The Prophet ﷺ said that we're not responsible for the things that we, al-khata wa nisyan, you know, if we forget something or if we make mistakes or if we're forced, then we're not responsible for those things. So if you don't know who it actually is, then you should actually, you can still give, you know, some sadaqah and then, you know, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you. If you have an idea who it is, then part of tawbah or repentance is radd al-madhalim, and that is compensation. So you should compensate the individual for what has happened. If you stole, you know, $500 from the local 7-Eleven, you know, I wouldn't advise you to go into the store and say, excuse me, sir, I stole $500, because he'll probably call the police. Right, but you can put it in an envelope or whatever, and you could give it back, you know, to the store owner. The question comes, what if you backbite and scandalize somebody? Then what do? You can't pay money to a person whose reputation you have spoiled. But the scholars tell us that you should say good things about that person. Your compensation is to say good things about that person until his reputation is restored. So you can do radd al-madhalim, you can compensate in many different ways. But we definitely need to not only ask Allah to forgive us, but we need to recognize the faults that we have done and make the intention not to return to the faults, to compensate the people, and then try to look at our whole life, all the areas of our life, and to protect ourselves from evil wherever it comes. So I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have mercy on us. Our questions have come to an end. And inshallah, you've been very patient. May Allah bless you and protect you. Have a safe journey home. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.